under fading skies. Tattered flags waving dreams in our eyes. The crowds roar like a storm on the wind. We're the underdogs fighting again.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? And welcome to another edition of the American Hotspur as we conclude another Hotspur Sunday. This time, Spurs versus Newcastle in Seoul, South Korea. And it was pretty much exactly what I expected to be a Spurs and Newcastle draw 1-1 this morning. And of course, we'll get into the entire recap because there's a lot of things that obviously we have to go over today. A lot of interesting things happen. Before we get into it, make sure you hit the like and subscribe buttons because, again, we are on a race for 1,000 subs. And, of course, you know what? There has been movement on the channel. So, listen, man, I want to thank everybody who tuned in and everybody who has subbed already. So I want to give a big shout out to those that have already done it, and also a big up to those who have yet to sub, who will sub, and all that good stuff anyways. All right, so let's get into it. Spurs versus Newcastle, man. And, of course, this one started kind of interesting as Spurs got off to a quick start. And it's something that I've been, essentially been screaming for about a year. I always wanted to see this team get off to a strong start, gain momentum as they get into a match. And, of course, it looked like that was actually going to take place as within the first 5 minutes, a ball was poked away. Brendan Johnson dribbled forward and slotted one past Nick Pope, and all of a sudden Spurs had nothing but momentum within those first 10 minutes. But as this game continuously progressed on in the first half, it was obvious that Newcastle was getting into this match, and they were methodically playing down the pitch, pushing it down that right-hand side as they were picking on Ben Davis time and time again. But that being said, that wasn't the only plan of attack, as they were actually methodically slicing through the middle of the park as well too, and utilizing that left-hand side as well too. And that manifested itself in the 38th minute when Harvey Barnes slotted one past Anton Kinski, beating Pedro Porro to the draw right there. And that is how this match ended in a 1-1 draw. But that being said, there were some positives. There were some individual performances that have to be talked about today. As well as, throwing Newcastle some props as well, too, because they were absolutely impressive at big swaths of this match as well, too. So as we get into it, I believe it was the 70th minute, Sonny was subbed out. And there was a huge parade of love around the Seoul, South Korea World Cup Stadium in front of his home fans. Sonny got to say goodbye to Tottenham Hotspur. And of course, what ended up going on was just nothing but a love affair. A lot of good memories poured out from the Spurs community as well too, as they remembered some of the better, highlights of Sonny's career, and of course the love affair not only with his teammates and coaches and technical staff, but of course for Newcastle as well too, as a lot of those, a lot of the opposition was giving him a lot of love as well too. It was a nice sight on the field to celebrate, which was a career that was pretty much unprecedented, man. It was a very good showing. And I would like to say that the rest of this match played out a little bit towards that, but unfortunately, not even 5 minutes later, James Maddison goes down with his what looks to be I hope that it's not season ending, but it is a knee injury that Thomas Frank has confirmed that it was a knee that he had previously hurt before, and we have yet to know what the serious damage is. But for Tottenham Hotspur at this point, they could not afford an injury of that magnitude, and we're going to get into exactly what this means moving forward. But that being said, the match ends 1-1, and I did want to get into a few performances that stood out to me today, because yes, for a large portion of the time, it felt like Spurs were trying to get Sonny that goal, as they tried on multiple occasions to play it down that left-hand side. There were a few different times where it looked like maybe Sonny might have been sprung free. But that being said, individual performance today, I felt like as we're going to start on the backside and work our way to the front, I thought Kinski was fine. That being said, man, let's just start with Antonin Kinski, because listen, on that goal, going near post, that ball probably should have been saved more often, more to it. It probably should have been blocked by Pedro Porro. Pedro actually did a very good job of at least closing down the space to at least make a challenge on it. The ball goes under his legs, and Kinski was just a little late off his line to make that save as that ball ricocheted off the post and in to tie the match. Outside of that, I thought Kinski was fine. I didn't think that Kinski really was spectacular. But that being said, it was solid, and to me that is the exact performance I think you want to see from your backup keeper. Somebody that is going to be aggressive, somebody that is going to at least do well on set pieces, and also man his 6-yard box to the best of his abilities. And I thought he was fine. Again, for those that are out there thinking that Kinski is probably going to take Vicario's job, I think we just need to pump the brakes a little bit, because I don't think that's ever going to happen. I think Vicario is firmly going to be number one, and I think today, in some clusters and in a vacuum, I think Kinski showed why he still has so much more development to get to that stage before he's actually going to be able to challenge for that number one. But today was not a bad performance from him. Yes, the goal should have been saved, but that being said, man, outside of that, he really didn't have a lot of work to do today. A lot of this was reactionary today. Again, set pieces, I thought he was fine. I actually thought the defense played a little bit better. That actually almost made him look a little bit better, but I don't know, man. That's just my view on it. The other guy that I want to talk about on that back line was Ben Davis. And again, man, Ben Davis was picked on. For a large portion of this match, he was picked on down that right-hand side, and reasonably so. I guess if you were looking at that Spurs back line today that started, you were going to look at it and you're going to circle a guy where, you were going to try to work down that side. Sure enough, Ben Davis ended up being that guy. They took their chances against Pedro Porro. Yes, they scored the goal off Porro's side as they were switching to the left-hand side. But I will say that Ben Davis actually handled himself actually quite well today. For the age and for his, I guess you could say lack of mobility. I would say that he actually handled himself pretty well today for a large part against Murphy. Against Murphy. So yeah, and I think that I think that actually there's some truth to that, because when Ben Davis was coming off the pitch, when he finally got subbed out, that dude was all vibes, man. He was very proud of himself, the job that he did today. And I think under the circumstances, I think he actually performed well at that left back position. Kevin Danso himself, I thought Kevin Danso was probably the best defender on the day, probably even more so than Cudi Romero. Considering that he's playing out of position on the left side, I thought Danso actually did a very good job. He was energetic, he was fast, he was quick. He was closing down space, and I thought he actually did a very good job, man. And again, it's nice to see that we actually have that guy in rotation that's going to be able to step into both, not only the right center back position, but also the left center back position if you need him in a pinch. And he's going to be able to, to withstand some of that pressure. And make no mistake, there was pressure today. As soon as Newcastle got comfortable, as soon as they got into the game, not only were they finding space, but they were pinging balls into the box, and Kevin Danso had to be up for today. And I thought he did a very good job. And I don't think it was any coincidence that he possibly, I think he's either number 1 or number 2 rated Spur this afternoon as well too. And so I think that just kind of shows you just exactly how good of a game that he played. I thought both Romero and Porro played well. Again, yes, the goal came on Porro's side. It's understandable, but that being said, I'm more inclined to let that one go for Porro's sake and not necessarily Kinski, because Porro did close down the space, right? He did not just allow Harvey Barnes just a free look at net, right? He at least tried to get in front of it, tried to make a block. It goes underneath the leg, and so I from that standpoint, I'm more willing to let him to get away with that one, but it is what it is. Solid performances from the back four. I thought they held up quite nicely today. The double pivot today of Archie Gray and Rodrigo Betancourt. Listen, man, Archie Gray had a great game. I liked his tenacity going forward. He was utilizing space that was open. I thought his passing was clean. And I thought that he was up for the challenge today, and he got himself into good looks, man. He was more than willing, to go 1v1. He was more willing to attack the end line and try to get balls in. He was actually trying to do things, which, from my standpoint, that's kind of what you want to see from a young player. He wasn't passive. That is the one thing that, even at this level, when you look at certain young players, right, you're wondering whether or not they're going to understand the full grasp of, understand the full grasp of the moment. And he certainly was up for it. And every time I watch him play, I'm just kind of mesmerized, because it just seems, just like Bergwall, it seems like every time he steps out there, he seems to get better. Or maybe that's just my impression of it. But that being said, he played pretty well today. And I thought Betancourt played well too. Being that solitary six today, I thought he held up quite well. I thought his passing was good. One of the things that I enjoyed about it, again, he was willing to close down space and make life difficult for Newcastle, especially as they cross the halfway line. Papsar, it's hard for Papsar to kind of play that 10 role. And I will acknowledge it, because he's really not that type of guy. He's more of an 8. He's more of a box-to-box guy. But that being said, he can play it. And he played it against Arsenal, scored a goal. Okay, fine. It was 3 goals in 2 games. So yeah, I mean, obviously there's proof there. But today, I think Newcastle did a very good job of trying to marking him out of the game. Didn't necessarily get on the ball as much as I would have liked. But it is what it is, right? Spurs were more, Spurs there's a good portion in the middle of the match where Spurs were essentially pinned back, and the only thing they could do was try to ping balls forward and try to get their speed underneath it. And credit to Newcastle, because they shut that down pretty good. And there's a reason why Newcastle held like 69% of the possession all game. There's a reason for that. They did a very good job of slowing down, Spurs attack. Their counterattack was pretty much non-existent for a good portion of that match until we got to like the 75th minute. But Papstar was essentially marked out of this one. Across the forward three, Brendan Johnson started off the match okay. I liked his hustle starting this one off. That being said, as the first half was kind of wearing along, kind of winding along a little bit, you kind of saw some of his old tendencies. As soon as he got the goal, you saw the momentum, you saw the expression, you saw the fun, you saw the joy. But as this thing kind of got into it, you kind of saw Brendan Johnson slowly get taken out of the match. And there was a time where you kind of saw his frustrations as well too kind of boil over. Especially as they were trying to play him forward. It it ended up not necessarily being a good game. Yes, he had the goal. So from that standpoint, okay, fine. That's great. But, you kind of like to see something a little bit more consistent from Brendan Johnson. But that being said, it's hard for me to harp on him a little bit, all things considered, because he did score the goal. But it is what it is, man. We saw a little bit of the new and we saw a little bit of the old. And it kind of lets you understand exactly why Mohamed Kudus has stepped in and essentially taken that position away from him. I mean, you can understand it, right? There's still a lot of work for Brendan Johnson, to get done before, I think Thomas Frank is going to consistently start him. So, that was my take. As far as Sonny goes, I thought Sonny was pumped up, man. This was his last match, and I thought that he was going to come out. I thought he was going to be spirited. I thought he was going to try things. I thought he was going to try to get a little bit more creative. But that being said, he had a couple opportunities as the balls were being played. He had an offsides on a switch where he was absolutely isolated alone. But that being said, it would have been nice to see him get a goal. It really would have. It just didn't work out that way, and it's unfortunate. But what are you going to do, right? So I thought, for his final game, a send off, I think the script was perfect, and I thought that he did himself justice with the play. He tried to motivate himself and he tried to play hard. So from that standpoint, I don't think anybody else can criticize him for his play today. It was what it was. But now, of course, we're going to get into it too, because there was some breaking news today from the American side regarding Sonny's next stop. So we're going to get into that as well too. And then, of course, Matisse Tell up front today. And of course, Matisse was the most disappointing thing, because he actually had a very good opportunity. As that ball was played forward, he skinned his defender, and he was 1v1 against Nick Pope. And in those situations, you have to do what you have to do to get that goal. And had he scored, and Spurs would have went up 2-0, maybe this entire game just shifts at that moment. But as it was, he tried to get too cute. He tried to get too fine. Played it into Nick Pope's strengths, and of course that ball was deflected away. Now, had he chipped it over and got the goal, this entire game changes on a dime. Unfortunately, it didn't work out, and I think Matisse Tell, from a work rate standpoint, I think he was fine. Just from those little details that a target 9 needs to do. In order to make sure that those attempts actually get taken and they actually get put in the back of the net, there's still a little more that needs to be worked on. But clearly, I think the way that Thomas Frank is going to utilize him this year is probably going to be up top. I can't imagine that it's going to be on the left-hand side. Maybe he will, but if you connect the dots this summer and you kind of see exactly where he's been played so far this preseason, it's been primarily as a striker and not necessarily on the left-hand side. And I think that the play of Wilson Odebear, and especially today when Odebear came in, right, it was night and day. And you can see that I think that, Thomas Frank it feels like he's trusting Odebear more and more and more to be that left-sided attacker. Now, of course, I would probably assume that they're going to go out and try to facilitate a deal to bring in another left-sided attacker. That is yet to be determined. But as of right now, I would probably assume that the plan of attack right now is to bring in another attacking midfielder, and of course, it was brought on because of the injury to James Madison, and of course Dan Davenport. Good to see you, Dan. Says there's talk Madison has got ACL and can miss the whole of the season, maybe the World Cup, 100%. And of course, from everything that Thomas Frank has been saying. And he's alluded to that it's the same knee that he injured. So from that standpoint, yeah, of course, man, 100%. And it's a shame too, because Madison is just getting back into fitness, getting back on the pitch for the first time, and now all of a sudden it was a non-contact injury, and it goes down. And so unfortunately, it's tough news, and it leaves Spurs into a bind, right? And I'm going to ask you guys this question, right? Of those players that were on the roster for the Asian tour, which guy has not even stepped on the pitch yet, right? And I'm not talking about guys that are coming back from injury. So of course Dominic Solanke hasn't been featured, right? but what other players have yet to see the pitch? I mean, Yang Min Hook got on today, and by the way, his performance was absolutely brilliant. By the way, but who hasn't been featured yet? And the name is Jamie Donnelly, right? The guy that the player that everybody wants to see. Jamie Donnelly didn't get on against Arsenal. He certainly didn't get on today against Newcastle, right? And I think that's actually kind of telling, right? And if you connect the dots, I think there's a case to be made that there's going to be a potential where Donnelly is most likely going to head out on loan again, which wouldn't be the worst thing, because I think when you think about his season last year in a vacuum, that performance was in League One. Not even the championship, right? So, now you're trying to extrapolate that performance and kind of meld it onto a Premier League team. And it's like, I don't know if he's necessarily ready to make that jump. Maybe I'm not right about this, but I think it was telling that against Arsenal and Newcastle, two teams that Spurs are very familiar with, and Jamie Donnelly didn't get on the pitch, and I think that says a lot, let alone Alfie Devine, right? So from that standpoint, right, and now we lose James Maddison, with a knee injury, and if it is an ACL, understand that he's going to be out for 8 to 10 months, right? And that would put him back in May, at the earliest, if everything goes right, he has no setbacks. You're looking at a May return date at the end of the season. So obviously there's going to be a need. And of course, Dejan Kulusevski's not going to be back until I think the earliest it was reported, if I remember correctly, might be the end of September, early October. So, Kulusevski's going to be out for at least a month and a half to start this season. And so obviously the Spurs are going to need help at that position. And of course, we found out, I believe on Friday, that Tottenham Hotspur have let the camp of Xavi Simons know, and Red Bull Leipzig, that they are very much interested in the attacking midfielder, and they are willing to pay the entire freight of what they're asking, right? And of course, I think it was widely accepted that he probably end up at Chelsea, but Chelsea's got problems of their own, and I think this is a perfect opportunity for Spurs to get in and make their move for a dude like Xavi Simons, right? Because it's either now or never. And now that we have this injury to James Maddison, and it's looking like he might be out for the entire year, now is the time to put a full court press on the guy and to let him know that not only do we want you, but you're going to most likely be starting at your natural position, which is the 10, and we're going to need you. Not only the Premier League, but also the Champions League as well too. And I think it's a perfect marriage. From a Chelsea standpoint, they got hit with UEFA sanctions, man. And in order for them to actually clear a room, they have to get rid of players in order to facilitate it. And of course, the players that they're looking to get rid of, they're overvaluing it. They're overvaluing, and I don't think they're going to be able to get rid of them, because if they don't get their books in order by the time the window ends, they're not going to be able to register certain players for European competition, let alone be able to buy new players. The Chelsea of old would just buy them and figure out the rest later, but it's not going to work that way, right? So they're going to have to sell players first in order to facilitate it. They've already told Red Bull Leipzig that they're not willing to pay the full freight, where Tottenham is definitely willing to do it. And of course, the other name out there is Eberechi Eze, and that one seems to be a little confusing, because I don't know what's going on with Crystal Palace's chairman Steve Parish. It almost seems like he's a moving target. It seems like the goalposts get moved back every single time Tottenham try to recircle back to him. I would probably assume that Eze is still interested, which would be something that obviously benefits us. But the question is whether or not they're going to want to get rid of one of their best players. Now, that's the impression I get from Crystal Palace, right? Because I think the obvious with Crystal Palace is they're probably willing to let Mark Gahey leave, but they want to keep. It feels like they almost want to keep him around. So I don't know, man. I don't know about the path of least resistance seems to be Xavi Simons, not necessarily Eberechi Eze. I know Spurs fans really want him. We have Mr. Rand Dobro Can you give my shout out a channel? What is your channel? You let me know what your channel is, and I'll shout it out, my guy. But yeah, devastating, absolutely devastating injury right on the eve of the two biggest matches of the preseason, Bayern Munich, and then of course PSG, and then the season starts, and now we're without our best number 10, and so this one's going to be a challenge, right? I don't think that this team is going to be able to survive with Pat Sarr playing that position. I hate to say it, because it's not wholeheartedly hard to mark him out of matches. And essentially what ends up happening at that point is that, we're stuck trying to attack down wings, and it's not going to be hard for teams to overload certain wings in order to stop certain players, right? So, if we don't have that creative outlet in the middle of the pitch, I would probably assume that teams are going to try to overload Mohamed Kudus and take him out of the picture as well too, leaving Spurs trying to attack down a left-hand side with an inexperienced Wilson Odegaard, right? So there's this injury came at the absolute worst time. But it is what it is, man. That's a part of the game. And so we will see exactly how this plays out over the course of the next week. I would probably guess that we'll probably hear something either tonight or tomorrow regarding Xavi Simons, because again, word came out on Friday that he's opened up a 48-hour window to make that decision, which means that Spurs have been talking to him for the last couple of days. And so I hope this actually goes well for Tottenham, because bringing in a dude like Xavi Simons would be absolutely huge. Unless they want to start, unless they really want to, really dive hard in with João Pelini at the 6th and then move Betancourt up the pitch. I don't know how that one's going to play. But that being said, we will find out very shortly what's going on with Xavi Simons. I would probably be remiss if we didn't hear anything tomorrow. The other piece of transfer news, and this comes from one of my other sources, is that I would probably assume that within the next week we will hear a lot about the gentleman from we will be in talks with the gentleman from Sunderland, the left back, Sirkin. And it looks like that's probably going to happen as well too. And I think from the degree of the fact that he is a homegrown player, and of course a homegrown player, it's something that Spurs also have to focus on as well too. Me personally, I wanted Anthony Robinson. I think that made perfect sense from a football standpoint. But that being said, when you think about the Champions League and some of the needs when it comes to the roster configuration, they're going to need homegrown players. And word is that that probably is going to get done sooner rather than later. So there's going to be a left back coming through the door. So that's kind of interesting. I guess that to me, I'm not necessarily a big fan of it, because again, when you look at the left back position, and when things are 100%, you're talking about Destiny Udogie, number 1, Jed Spence is number 2. Even though he's a right back, but he would probably be the second choice. And then you would have Sirkin, right, who may or may not see the field until cup matches, at the very least early cup matches, right? So, he is just there to fill a roster mandate, which absolutely makes no sense, right? If you're going to spend money, you want to bring in somebody that's actually going to challenge for a starting spot. But I digress. Word is from my source that that's going to happen sooner rather than later as well too. Dan Davenport says we need a bigger squad to challenge in all competitions. Otherwise, it could be relegation and not finishing in Champions League spots. Listen, man. If there was a time to get relegated, it was last year. Last year was a season that normally would have ended up in relegation, and it just didn't happen. We were able to stave off relegation. I don't think this team is that bad. I actually think when you look at this squad on paper, there's talent everywhere. I do agree with you that we do need a bigger squad size. And I'm talking like in the 35 to 37 range. I think right now it's at 28, 29 last time I checked. So yeah, I agree with you. The squad size needs to improve, because at the very least, you're going to need good rotation between the two major competitions, which is the Premier League and the Champions League. If you want to rotate for cup matches, and potentially give guys that are farther down the depth chart an opportunity to go to, to get some playing time. Yeah, I guess you can use the League Cup for that as well too. But for the most part, yeah, the two biggest competitions this season are the league itself and the Champions League. And Spurs have a responsibility to make sure that they do not get even remotely close to where they finished last season. And I just don't see it. I've been consistent when I say that as of right now, if nothing else happens for the rest of the summer, I think this team at the high end is a 6th place team. Right. And that would be Europa League. Like, I think so. Right. I look at it and I'm like, well, if they don't do anything else, yeah, I can probably see a 6th place on the high end. On the low end, maybe 8th. And they miss European play altogether, but they finish in the top 10. And at least that's a good first season to build off, because at least you know exactly where you need to improve, right? Like, this thing is not going to happen in year one. And I think that, the expectations of fans, especially coming off a trophy in a season where we probably had no business winning one, put maybe an unfair expectation in the eyes of fans. And to be honest with you, I just don't see it. When you look at the team as a whole and you look at the areas of need we need to improve, unless something drastic happens between now and the end of the in the end of the window, which I think 2 more players are going to come in. Me personally, I just I don't see a top 4, but I can't see a relegation. I can't see a relegation scrap unless, of course, we have another injury crisis where 9 of our starting 11 go out for long stretches of time. But so far, outside of James Madison, we've been relatively healthy. So, obviously that's a knock on wood. We'll find out what's going on with Destiny Udogie. He's not going to be out for 4 months. It looks like Destiny's going to be back before the start of the regular season, but I digress. But yeah, overall today, I thought it was kind of a mild performance by the squad. I thought for large stretches of time when they were pinned back, they were, it felt like they were just throwing darts at a dartboard, hoping something would stick. There was not a lot of continuity from the 20th minute all the way to like the 70th minute. It just felt like it was all Newcastle. But that being said, they still managed a 1-1 draw. I do want to get into my man of the match today. For your Tottenham Hotspur. And I think that Kevin Danso probably gets a lot of love from me today. Yes, I know Brendan scored the goal, but I didn't think Brendan was consistent today. And no, Dan, I'm not a fan of Robert Downey Jr. movies. Sorry, but I thought Kevin Danso was probably the most consistent Spur of them all. And I like the fact that, he was doing it out of position. And I just thought that he was the one guy that you can point to when you're asking the word consistency, who actually exuded it. It was him. But that being said, that is going to be my wrap up. Mark Ruffalo. Did you just ask me if I'm a Mark Ruffalo fan? The answer is yes, I am, actually. That's funny, though. That's actually funny. Let's see. He will be playing Dr. Doom in the Avengers next movie. Who? Robert Downey Jr. or Mark Ruffalo? That's kind of funny. That's by the way, that was a good pull right there, Dan. He was in this movie with Jennifer Garner. What was it? 13 going on 30. That was actually a pretty good role for Mark Ruffalo. That was an entertaining movie. He was also in the Zodiac movie. I think he played the reporter. Or was that Jake Gyllenhaal? I can't remember. He either played the cop or the reporter. I can't remember. But anyways, yeah, Mark Ruffalo, had a good 15 minutes of fame there. Let's see, Mark Ruffalo playing Doc Banner and the Hulk. I didn't see the Hulk, man. I got to be honest with you. I'm not a Marvel guy. I'm really not a Marvel guy. I don't think I've actually even seen one Marvel movie at all. Just not my style, man. I'm not a big fan. So. But yeah, Mark Ruffalo is Mark Ruffalo. I love it. All right, guys. I just wanted to do this quick little recap, and of course, this concludes another Hotspur Sunday. We will be back next week, and hopefully, we are going to have a good guest lined up for the American Hotspur next weekend as we continue to bring on really good Spurs content providers. So yeah, man. Hopefully everything works out, and of course next week is going to be the continuation of the League Cup live stream, and I believe, just really quick. Okay, yeah, and since the Bayern match is on Thursday, we will not be doing a Hotspur live stream, but I do believe, correct me if I'm wrong, just out of curiosity, let me check the calendar real quick, that we will be back potentially for the we will be back for the UEFA Super Cup as well too. So we will see how this plays out. Until then, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Dan Davenport, man, I'm glad you got my back, my guy. You guys enjoy the rest of your weekend. I hope you have a great work week ahead of you. I hope you guys are productive, happy, all that good stuff, man. Make sure you hit the subscribe buttons as well too. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.